Welcome to Max Premieres. Today we're looking at the most anticipated films of 2026, a selection of blockbusters ranging from Christopher Nolan's Greek epic to Star Wars returning to cinemas, plus superheroes, long-awaited sequels and bets that promise to be major cinematic events. The order goes from least to most anticipated, according to my personal take. If this content is useful to you, a like and a subscribe would be a big help. Thanks for being here. Number 19. Scream 7. Sidney Prescott is back. Almost 3 decades after Ghostface first entered her life, Neve Campbell returns to the role that made her famous to face a new incarnation of the masked killer, who this time seems to know exactly who she is and what she fears most. The original screenwriter of the franchise, Kevin Williamson, steps into the director's chair for the first time in this 7th installment. The absence of Jenna Ortega and Melissa Barrera complicates things for fans of the last 2 films, but the push to return to the original formula makes sense for a franchise that has always worked best when it stays close to Sidney. The balance between the meta humor that defines the saga and genuine horror is the ultimate test for any entry in this series. The first images and trailer generated enormous anticipation among franchise fans, especially after confirming Courtney Cox's return as Gale Weathers alongside Campbell in the main cast. Number 18. Wuthering Heights. The darkest and most destructive love story in English literature arrives on screen with Emerald Fennell, the director of Saltburn and Promising Young Woman, 2 films that prove she knows exactly how to portray obsession and cruelty with remarkable visual elegance. Margot Robbie plays Catherine Earnshaw and Jacob Elordi plays Heathcliff in an adaptation of Emily Bronte's novel that promises to be just as polarizing as Fennell's previous work. The core of the novel, that consuming passion that destroys both protagonists rather than saving them, is precisely the kind of material Fennell handles with visual sophistication and narrative coldness. Expectations are enormous, especially after Saltburn became a major cultural conversation piece. If Fennell manages to capture the emotional brutality of the original without softening it for modern audiences, this could be one of the most significant literary adaptations of the year. Number 17. The Devil Wears Prada 2. Miranda Priestly is back. Meryl Streep returns to the role many consider one of the best performances of her career, that fashion magazine editor who terrorized everyone at Runway with her impossible demands and calculated indifference. Anne Hathaway also returns as Andy Sachs, who now navigates the world of digital journalism with a very different established career than in her first encounter with high fashion. The pressure to surpass the original is enormous because the 2006 film has become a permanent cultural reference. The tone, if it maintains the acidity and humor of the first, can work very well. If the screenplay tries to soften Miranda's character to make her more sympathetic with the passage of time, it would lose everything that made her memorable. Pre-release reviews suggest the film understands what made the original great and isn't afraid to lean into it again. Number 16. Ready or Not 2. Here I Come. The 2019 first film was a genuine surprise in horror comedy, a bride who has to survive her wedding night as part of a deadly game in her eccentric husband's family mansion. The sequel brings back Samara Weaving in the lead role, who proved with that first film that she has the perfect timing for dark comedy combined with convincing physical action. Directors Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett, also known for their recent Scream reboot work, return to direct. The challenge for the sequel is finding a premise with the same freshness and surprise as the original without simply repeating the exact same formula. Early notes about the screenplay suggest it expands the Ladomas family universe in ways fans of the first film didn't anticipate. Weaving has the charisma to carry the sequel if the material supports her. Number 15. Street Fighter. The most influential fighting video game in history returns to attempt the cinematic adaptation after several failed attempts, including Jean-Claude Van Damme's notorious 90s version. This new take arrives at a moment when video game adaptations are experiencing their best period in terms of quality and audience reception, with Minecraft and other projects proving the genre can work well when treated with proper respect. Iconic characters like Ryu, Ken, Chun-Li, and the inevitable Guile finally have a chance to be represented with the fidelity fans always demanded. The main challenge is building a coherent story around characters who in the game exist primarily to fight each other. If the tone and cast are right, this could be the definitive Street Fighter adaptation the franchise always deserved to have on the big screen. Number 14, Mortal Kombat 2. The 2021 first film was received with enormous enthusiasm by video game fans thanks to its uncompromising brutality and fidelity to the game universe. The sequel needs to maintain that characteristic violence while also building a more solid narrative than the first, which was criticized for its somewhat fragmented structure. Louis Tan returns as Cole Young alongside Josh Lawson as Kano, one of the crowd favorites from the first film. The most anticipated element is the arrival of characters who didn't appear in the first entry, particularly Johnny Cage, whose end credits cameo in the first film put audiences completely on his side. If Mortal Kombat 2 can balance the fight spectacle with a story that carries more emotional weight, it has all the ingredients to surpass the first entry. The franchise's mythology is so rich that a single film was never enough to contain it. Number 13, Greenland 2. The 2021 film was one of the best disaster movies of the last decade, with Gerard Butler at his best as a desperate father trying to get his family to safety in the middle of a mass extinction event by comet impact. The sequel continues, with the survivors rebuilding civilization from scratch on a radically changed planet. The main question for the sequel is how much it can expand the world without losing the personal urgency that made the first film so effective. Gerard Butler returns alongside Morena Baccarin. Director Rick Roman Waugh also returns. If the sequel maintains that balance between large-scale action and human vulnerability that worked so well in the original, it has every chance of repeating its success. A solid proposition for fans of disaster cinema that hasn't had enough good representatives in recent years. Number 12, Moana. Disney continues its strategy of adapting its animated classics to live action with the story of Moana, the young Polynesian navigator who defied her island's boundaries to find demigod Maui and restore the heart of Te Fiti. The 2016 animated film is one of the most beloved of Disney's modern era, with songs that became permanent standards in the studio's repertoire. The main expectation from fans is whether the live-action version can capture the visual majesty of the ocean that was one of the great virtues of the animated version. Casting choices are crucial for these adaptations. The film arrives months after the animated Moana sequel released, meaning this character's universe is in full expansion, and audiences are receptive to more content from this particular world. Number 11, Peaky Blinders, The Immortal Man. Tommy Shelby returns. Cillian Murphy, Oscar winner for his role in Oppenheimer, picks up the character that made him internationally famous for the cinematic conclusion of the Peaky Blinders saga. The BBC series ended with Tommy in a desperate situation, and the film picks up exactly from that thread. Stephen Knight, the series creator, writes and directs to ensure the material maintains the voice and tone that made the series an international phenomenon. The jump from small to big screen always carries risks, but also advantages in terms of production and scale. The anticipation among series fans is enormous. Murphy has the magnetism to carry an entire film as the absolute protagonist, something the series already demonstrated repeatedly over 6 seasons. Number 10, Spider-Man, Brand New Day. Tom Holland returns as Peter Parker in the 4th installment of his Spider-Man, this time without Iron Man's protection, without public knowledge of his identity, and with the blank slate that the end of No Way Home promised. Brand New Day is precisely that, a fresh start for a Spider-Man who now has to build his story without relying on the narrative anchors of the first 3 films. Director Destin Daniel Cretton, known for Shang-Chi, takes control of the franchise. The title comes directly from an iconic comic book arc, and fans of the comics understand exactly what that could mean for Peter Parker's story. Zendaya returns as MJ. Expectations are very high after the cultural phenomenon that was No Way Home, but the bet on restarting the character within the same universe is an idea with enormous potential. Number 9, Silent Hill. The fog-shrouded city returns to the cinema. The psychological horror video game that defined a genre in the 90s comes back with a new adaptation looking to capture the atmospheric and psychological horror that made the franchise great. The 2006 first film had brilliant and visually impressive moments, particularly in its monster design, but failed to maintain the narrative coherence that makes the original game memorable. This new version has the opportunity to correct those mistakes and commit to an experience closer to the source material. The Silent Hill universe has such rich mythology that a single film has never been sufficient to contain it. If the production team has the patience to build the world correctly before unleashing the action, it could be one of the best horror video game adaptations ever made. Number 8. Hunger Games: Sunrise on the Reaping. The Hunger Games franchise returns with the prequel to the 50th Hunger Games, The Quarter Quell, where a young Haymitch Abernathy participated and won in a way that marked his life forever. Suzanne Collins' novel, published in 2024, was an instant success, and the film adaptation was a certainty from day one. The character of Haymitch is one of the favorites of the original saga, and seeing his origin story has the potential to be emotionally devastating for those who know the future that awaits him. Lionsgate bets heavily on continuing the franchise that was their greatest commercial asset for years. The same narrative courage as Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes is needed here for Sunrise on the Reaping to have the impact fans are hoping for. Number 7. 28 Years Later: The Bone Temple. The second part of the new trilogy in the Infected saga arrives directly continuing the events of the first film. Danny Boyle filmed the central scenes of both entries during the same production period, guaranteeing visual and narrative continuity that few sagas can offer. Nia DaCosta, the director of Candyman 2021 and Captain Marvel 2, takes control of this second entry with Jodie Comer in the central role. The subtitle, The Bone Temple, suggests an expansion of the universe that goes beyond simple survival and enters more mythic territory. If the first film reestablishes the rules of the world, this second entry has the mission of breaking them in ways the audience didn't anticipate. The combination of DaCosta with the material that Danny Boyle and Alex Garland created for the saga is one of the most interesting creative pairings of the year. Number 6. Dune: Part 3. Denis Villeneuve closes his epic trilogy with the adaptation of Dune Messiah, Frank Herbert's second novel. Paul Atreides is no longer the hero he dreamed of being. He is the Kwisatz Haderach, the Muad'Dib, the religious leader of a jihad that is swept across the universe in his name while he watches with guilt and powerlessness. The third entry promises to be the darkest and most morally complex of the three, moving away from the adventure narrative of the first two to explore the consequences of having created a myth. Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Rebecca Ferguson, and Austin Butler return. The production budget is the highest of the three films. Villeneuve has stated, this is the conclusion the project always needed. The ending of Dune. Part 2 left audiences at a perfect point of anticipation to see where this dark story leads. Number 5. Supergirl: Woman of Tomorrow. Kara Zor-El is not the Supergirl we know. This version of the character consciously watched the destruction of her planet Krypton, something her cousin Kal-El never experienced, and that made her harder, wilder, and less inclined to compassion than Superman. Millie Alcock, the Australian actress who became famous in House of the Dragon, plays Kara in her first solo adventure, traveling across the cosmos to pursue an intergalactic assassin. Jason Momoa appears as Lobo, the most charismatic mercenary in the DC universe. Craig Gillespie, the director of Cruella, is behind the camera. James Gunn has said that casting Alcock might be the best thing he's ever done. The second film of the new DC universe needs to confirm that Superman was not an accident, but the beginning of something solid and lasting for the studio. Number 4. Star Wars: The Mandalorian and Grogu. The Empire has fallen, but its remnants still threaten the young Republic. Din Djarin, the Mandalorian bounty hunter who became the galaxy's most unexpected adoptive father, returns to cinema for the first time in Star Wars history, alongside his apprentice Grogu. The Disney Plus series that revolutionized the way people consume Star Wars and turned Grogu into the franchise's most beloved character in decades finally gets its film. Jon Favreau writes and directs. Pedro Pascal leads the cast alongside Sigourney Weaver as Colonel Ward and Jeremy Allen White as Rada the Hutt. Ludwig Göransson's music returns to the franchise that made him world famous. Pedro Pascal said in an interview that this is one of the greatest adventure movies in the entire history of cinema. We'll see if the hyperbole is justified, but there are many reasons to be genuinely excited. Number 3. Avengers: Doomsday. Robert Downey Jr.'s return to the Marvel Universe as Doctor Doom is the most unexpected and most talked about cinematic event in years. Not as Iron Man, but as the most iconic villain of the Fantastic Four, now transformed into the supreme adversary of the Avengers. The Russo brothers return to direct after Infinity War and Endgame, the two events that defined an entire era of superhero cinema. The promised scale is enormous. All the casting of the new Marvel Cinematic Universe converges here for the first time, along with characters from the previous universe expected to appear. The narrative weight this film carries is monumental, as it needs to be the culmination of everything built since Superman, while simultaneously leaving the road open for the next stage of the franchise. Number 2. Project Hail Mary. Rylan Grace, a high school science teacher who is actually a brilliant molecular biologist, wakes up on a spacecraft light years from Earth with no memory of his name or how he got there. His memories return gradually, along with an understanding of his mission: save the sun, which is dying due to a mysterious substance stealing its energy. Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, directors of the Lego Movie and Into the Spider-Verse, adapt Andy Weir's novel, the same author as The Martian. Ryan Gosling stars in what early reviews described as the most complete and emotionally resonant performance of his career. Sandra Huller completes the cast. It grossed over $617 million worldwide, with 94% on Rotten Tomatoes. One of the best science fiction films in many years, and a first-rate narrative triumph that surpasses all previous expectations. Number 1. The Odyssey. The Trojan War is over. Odysseus, the man who devised the wooden horse to deceive the impregnable city, begins the journey home to Ithaca, where his wife Penelope and his son Telemachus await him. A journey that should take weeks becomes a 10-year odyssey through monsters, gods, sirens, and impossible perils. Christopher Nolan, the director of Oppenheimer and The Dark Knight, takes Homer's epic and films it with a $250 million budget using brand new IMAX technology. Matt Damon is Odysseus. Tom Holland is Telemachus. Anne Hathaway is Penelope. Charlize Theron is Calypso. Zendaya is Athena. Robert Pattinson is also in the cast in a role nobody has revealed yet. Ludwig Göransson composes the score. IMAX tickets for opening weekend sold out a year before the release date, the most anticipated film of the year without any possible debate. And that's everything for today. Highly anticipated films of 2026 that will keep cinema screens packed all year long. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you don't miss our next videos. See you in the next one. Thanks for watching.